Hello. In the last class, we looked at how to create table in Postgres using SQL commands, and I gave an in-class practice that we should try out, and on the third table. Now, this third table is quite peculiar, and you must have noticed it in that it has a bit of a different syntax than what we've been doing since. And this is because we have something called a composite key or a composite primary key in this query. Now, what is a composite primary key? A composite primary key is made by combining two or more columns in a table to uniquely identify that particular row. So I'll give an example. In this particular row now, we have in this particular table rather, we have user ID, we have role ID, we have grant date. Now, this is peculiar because one user may have two different role IDs, and one role ID could also be owned by many users. So this occurs majorly where we have many-to-many relationships. Remember, when we described many-to-many relationships, we talked about a call center where we have many call center agents assigned to call many users. So agent A, agent B, agent C could all call user 1 today, while agent A could call user 1, 2, 3 today. So it is a many-to-many relationship. So we need more than one key to uniquely identify a row. So when we combine two rows, say user ID and role ID, because this user A could have role 1, role 2, role 3, and role 1 can be owned by user 1, 2, and 3. Just to uniquely identify an observation in that table, we can say you can combine user ID and role ID. So when user A owns or works or is matched with role 1, that is a unique identifier of that particular observation. When I say observation is another word for a row in a table. So that's why we have a composite key. Now, the syntax is a bit different because we do not specify primary key in front of those particular fields like user ID, int, not null, primary key. We create a whole new line for primary key where we specify both rows that are the primary key in this table. So foreign key as well. When you are writing a foreign key, remember we said a foreign key is a column on a table that is a primary key on another table. So in this case, row ID, even while being the primary key, is still a foreign key because it is the primary key on the rows table. And while user ID, even while being a part of the primary key in this table, is a foreign key because its references or user ID is a primary key in the accounts table. So on this account rows table, role ID is not the primary key, user ID is not the primary key. We can only have one primary key. So the primary key on this table is the combination of role ID and user ID, not each of them separately are not primary keys, but a combination of both of them are the primary key. So that's the bit of complexity, especially when you have many-to-many relationships. So let's write this code. I've written it out here already. I'm just going to run it. I'm going to run it now. So it's here, and let's try highlighting. So I did create table if not exists. It's just what we have on the slides. User ID, int, not null, primary key, rule, and so on and so forth. And if I run this, mind you, when I specify the foreign key, I'm telling it which table it references. So foreign key on this table is role ID, right? But it references role ID on the rows table. So I specify the table, the rows table. User ID also is a foreign key on this table, but it references user ID on the accounts table. So that's where I'm creating the link, the relationship. The referencing shows the relationship between the tables. So I'm going to highlight this and run it. So I run this and successfully I can see, if I refresh the tables here, I can see that my, just refresh this. I can see that my um, account rows table is created here. I can see it right here. Account rows table is created. So we've successfully created tables, and I'm sure we are all comfortable with writing code to create tables, either using the GUI or code. We are all comfortable. GUI is quite simple. Just click button and you create a new table. Now, we have empty tables here. We have account table, we have rows table, we have account rows table. Let's add something to our table. Let's insert um, some let's create a new table and insert, just to practice. Let's create a new table. Let's call it customer table, and let's insert files into, or insert data into the customer table. So let's come with me. Let's create a new table. Let's call it create table if not exists. Let's call it customer table. So I'm going to enter my fields or my columns, right? My first will be, I'm going to call it customer ID. It's going to be, let's make it serial, and it's primary key as well, not null. So primary key and not null, because it's the primary key. Now, there's something I would like to point out here, and say that when working with Postgres, let's try as much as possible. I mentioned the camel casing and the way to improve readability in Postgres. But when we are inserting, there's a fault. There's an error that it throws out because Postgres really can't reference mixed cases tables. So it's safer to have your table name in all lower cases. So that's just a pro tip here. So that's why, so if you want to improve readability, you can just separate them with an underscore. So I've created customer ID is my first field. For my second field, we'll call it a let's say first name. First name. So first name, that's going to be a variable character. So varchar. I don't expect anybody to have long names as such, so I'm just going to say 20 for first name. Let's also say not null because I want them to have their first name. I would also say last name, also very important. Last name, varchar as well. 20. Let's say not null as well. Let's just stop it right. Okay, let's add one for age. Let's say age. Age is definitely an integer, right? And not null as well. Not null. So let's run this. And let's click on run. Is there an error? So there we have it. We've successfully created that table. So I'm going to refresh my tables. And I can see my customer table right here. So the aim of this is to insert. We want to insert data into our table, just not have a blank table. So let's look at the syntax. The syntax is quite simple. It's just insert into the table name the column names, and then I enter my values. So let's try that out. So let's start insert into my table name is customer. When I refresh this, just so I enter my table name customer, and I specify the fields I want to insert values into. So the first field is customer ID. There's an option here, so I enter my customer ID. The next is first name. The next is last name. I really don't have to type it, brings out the options for me. And the next is age. So the syntax says values. I have to type in values. Now I enter the values in the order at which or with which I enter the fields. So my first field is customer ID. I'm going to assign customer ID of 1 as my first customer. Now, when you are adding numerical values, you do not have to add anything, just enter the values as they are. But when you are entering text or strings or any character apart from numbers, you have to wrap them in an inverted comma. So 1, that's my customer ID, customer 1, and my customer first name is David. So remember I said wrap it in an inverted comma. So David, and his last name is Benjamin, right? And his age is 24. So if I run this, so you can see a query ran successfully. So let's see and be sure that what we have is what we've imputed is in our table. Now we're going to try a simple select statement now. We have a separate video for that, but this is just to check that what we entered is what is in our data, in our table rather. So simple select statement syntax is just select star, and we'll explain all this later. Select star from our table name customer, and I end up with a semicolon. And if I highlight this and run it, so we can see now that what we've entered is in our table. Customer ID is 1, first name is David, last name is Benjamin, age is 24. So let's add 2 new customers at once. So this time I'm going to say insert into customer. Now I do not need to enter a customer ID anymore because it's serial. It's supposed to be incremental. So I'm just going to enter first name, last name, and age. So I'm going to say first name, last name, and age. So the values I want are values 2. The first person is I'll call a Mary. Last name is Eniola. Age is 26. That's the first person. Enter the second person, I enter a comma, open another bracket. This person is David, again another David. Last name is Thomas, and age is 30. And I end up with a semicolon. And if I like this and run it, so the query is run, and now let's check. Let's inspect our table, and we run that and see what we have. So we see that automatically Postgres has assigned customer IDs to these new entries on the table automatically. We didn't have to enter 2 or 3. So this is how to insert values in a newly created table or in a table. So let's try that out. You could insert more values as well if you like. You could insert more values as well into your tables. So in the next video, we'll be looking at how to import CSV files, flat files into pgadmin. So it's quite cumbersome having to import import values into a table or create values in a table by writing out the code for each row. So you could have a very large table of about 1,000 rows or so. It's going to be really cumbersome writing the code. So an easy way would be to import an already made CSV file where we have all the values and just importing it into Postgres. So we'll be looking at that in the next video. As a task, I want us to create this database on our own. We'll be using this database in the next lecture. The database is going to be called pizza sales. It's going to have 4 tables in it. Order detail is one table, orders is another table, pizza type is another table, and pizzas is another table. And these are the attributes. So we have order details ID, order ID, pizza ID, quantity. So these are the attributes for orders as well. Order ID, date and time. Attributes for pizza type ID, name, category, ingredients. Pizza's table has pizza ID, pizza type ID, size, and price. So let's create this on our own using any method. You could use the GUI method, and you could also use the code method, whatever method you choose. But let's have this done so we can import a CSV file into it in the next video. See you in the next class. Thank you.